Hello there, welcome to another live stream with me, your old mate Rod from Super License. Flying solo again, no Zach this time, but that's not going to stop me from trying to do what I do best. I don't know, I seem to be doing okay. I am doing my best, I'm trying my best. It's been a little while since we've done a podcast, so I just thought I'd do another little filler episode here, just to see if I've still got what it takes to talk about Formula One if my brain is not completely gone. The more observant of you may have noticed I'm a bit of a haircut boy. I went into the barbers and I said, make me look like Will Buxton. And they said, mate, we're barbers, we're not miracle workers. We'll do what we can though. But I was like, I usually get like the dude cut that's just like short here and I don't know, a bit off the top. That's all I can do. It's the best I can do, mate. It's just the best I can do. So we've got a little bit to talk about tonight. We're going to talk a lot about Teflon Don, the Teflon Don of Formula One. Flavio B is back, Flavio Briatore, the return. And we're going to dip into the listener mailbag to see what everybody has to say. So we've got a little bit to get on with. Might just start kickoff. Oh, it wouldn't be a kickoff if I didn't play this.
Wow, I guess this is a big moment. I should care about it.
Yep, you should care about it. It kills me that guy in the middle says yep, because that's a perfect soundbite without that, but it doesn't matter. So where do we start? So I know a few people saw the Danica Patrick video that I did a little while ago, and right before I made that and it went out and it was very popular, it did very well. But right before that I said, I'm going to do a video on Flavio Briatore. And then the next minute I saw the Danica Patrick thing and I went, oh, forget that. Got to do a video about lizard people now instead. But Flavio Briatore has been on my mind and I've got a heap of notes and I've got a few things I want to show and talk about. So we'll get stuck into that in just 1 second. Okay. So Flavio Briatore, come on, man. So Flavio Briatore has burst back onto the Formula One scene, and it's been immediate headlines. And there's been, like whenever you see a Formula One headline with swear words in it, you know that old school Formula One is back on the agenda. You know that like the mafia style era of Formula One is back. The old ruling class is back. I'll get to some of those headlines in a sec. But first of all, I wanted to play this unbelievable clip from this podcast that it must have been around for a while, or maybe it's brand new. Shows what I know. But this is a podcast called Formula for Success. The initials are FFS, which I guess they're kind of channeling the Franz Ferdinand Sparks thing here by going with the edgy name, the edgy initial at FFS. But anyway, this is David Coulthard, Eddie Jordan's podcast called Formula for Success. And here they are talking about the return of Flavio Briatore and the pros and cons, I guess. But here's what Eddie Jordan had to say about Flavio Briatore returning to Formula One.
First of all, I think 1990, 1991, when Jordan started, the person I fought with most in my early years was Flavio. But the person I loved most was Flavio.
It reads like a pre-written thing, like he had this prepared.
The person I enjoyed going out to dinner with most was Flavio. So there was a love-hate relationship, which is often the great signs of great love affairs.
He claims to barely know you.
It was a love-hate relationship. He doesn't know who you are.
That may be the case. I absolutely adore him. He has a presence in abundance. Like it's like confetti or magic dust. You just see suddenly the cameras that were on a racing driver, for example, and they're all rushing around to the other side because Briatore has made an entrance. And
not true. That's an obvious lie.
I'll tell you a little story. It was a very funny thing. Maybe years and years ago, when you went to Sardinia, of course, Porto where the Billionaire Club first started, which was Flavio's club. And at 12 o'clock midnight, you'd have this fanfare, big, long red carpet. And this guy chaired in by four muscly men, and he's sitting up on a throne with a crown on his head. I mean, it was the most bizarre thing you could ever
the music
imagine.
was Flavio.
No, but it was the music, it was Flavio, and then the
Flavio,
flares that were going up and thing. And myself, I was there with Fisichella. So it was at the time, it must have been 97 or whenever it was. And Maria and I and Fisichella, we were sitting on a boat, and we'd been invited by Flavio. And that is the epitome of this guy. He loves personal adoration. You know, he went out with Naomi Campbell. He went out with this girl and that girl. He had...
Sounds great.
Actually, just on that, sorry to jump across you, Eddie, with your train of thought.
You've got to... It's exactly like David Coulthard to jump in now that supermodels and women are being discussed. But anyway.
Because he had the ability to have his ex-wife and four of his girlfriends, former girlfriends, including Heidi Klum, Naomi Campbell, and others, on his boat during this year's Monaco Grand Prix. If that is not a sign of a master negotiator and people person, I don't know what is.
Well, we know what counts in Formula One, don't we? Yeah. Rich guy got famous people onto his yacht during the Monaco Grand Prix. What a master negotiator. He must be really talented. Like, he must really be something special. People would chew off their own arms to get onto a yacht during Monaco Grand Prix. It doesn't matter. So look, this guy, he just seems to be magic. This guy, he could do anything. He could walk on water. You know, I mean, he's the life of the party. So why are the headlines like this? Fuck off, Flavio Briatore's response to critics after controversial Alpine F1 return. Flavio Briatore has told his critics to fuck off after it was announced that the controversial former team principal has returned to the Alpine F1 squad. Did I pick out the salient details here? I feel like I'm going to cover some of these other details in another article that I want to read. But I did a video recently that was a little bit about what's going on at the Alpine team, in particular some sponsorship that they got and a sponsorship deal that they announced with the Bored Ape people with their brilliant and innovative NFTs and so on. Now that Flavio has been brought back in as a sort of business connection man, that they asked him, do you want to be team principal? And he was like, no, I'm not interested in being team principal. I'm just here to help. I just want to get us back to our winning ways. But, I mean, now that this has been announced, that Bored Ape deal has his fingerprints all over it. And I read a few articles today, and I wanted to pick the best one that I felt summed up how I felt about the return of Flavio Briatore. There was another one that was called... I should put the link I won't read it, but I'll put the link to it in the video. But it was called something like, maybe Flavio should fuck off instead of his critics, or something like that. Just unbelievable stuff. I'm going to read this article here, and this gets into some of the... Maybe I can make this bit bigger. Some of the good and bad of Flavio Briatore's backstory, and why it's a bit rich for him to be telling his critics to fuck off. But they, straight away, this is from Rush magazine, which, whatever, I've never heard of it. But I mean, all that counts, Craig Toon here, a few years ago, did a fabulous job and has been updated more recently. A great job of going through the backstory of Flavio Briatore and the big byline here, the Teflon Don of Formula One. As we'll get to after I read through all of this, I think that you will find that there's another rich and influential Donald, who's been in the news of late, who this guy reminds me more of. Maybe you'll pick up what I'm putting down when I start reading a bit more, but here's some backstory on Flavio Briatore, the magic guy, the guy who, when he comes into the paddock, all the photographers turn away from the drivers to take photos of him. Here's a little bit more about Teflon Don. Where should I start here? There's a lot of detail in here. I don't want to read it all, but I'll pick out some of the best details. Starts around here. Whatever the enterprising young Flavio lacked in classroom application, he made up for in street smarts, working as a ski instructor before opening his own restaurant, Tribula, which closed due to excessive debt. Hey, fabulous. Briatore tried his hand as a door-to-door insurance salesman before finding work as an assistant to Attilio Dutto, owner of the Paramati Venice Paint Company. Sorry for butchering all these names. Dutto was killed on the 21st of March 1979 in a car bomb attack by unknown perpetrators. The method of execution was the calling card of La Cosa Nostra. That's, I assume, the mafia or someone connected, something like that. It quickly emerged that Dutto was bankrupt and Briatore's involvement in his business affairs would lead to his arrest on several counts of fraud. It's going well so far. He's 29 at this point. So not even like a young kid who got mixed in with the wrong crowd. He's a grown-ass man. During the prosecution, Briatore moved to Milan and worked as a stockbroker, making the acquaintance of Luciano Benetton, founder of the Benetton Clothing Company. Briatore racked up more arrests. They just moved straight on from that. He met Luciano Benetton, founder of Benetton Clothing, and then he got arrested a whole bunch more times. Briatore racked up more arrests via a series of confidence scams, and the courts eventually sentenced him to 4.5 years in prison, reduced to 14 months on appeal. This article skims right past this, but I did look into this, and the scams that he was pulling was basically rigged card games where he would invite big whales, high rollers, to these backroom, poker matches or whatever game they were playing. And there were these phony decks of cards, and he would just completely rip them off. And everybody in on the deal made $1 squillion. Just ridiculous. This is the guy. This is the magic guy. So he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Preferring the idea of an exotic paradise to the prospect of time behind bars, Briatore fled to the Virgin Islands and lived in exile as a fugitive. So a real good guy. Just, someone who really takes accountability for his wrongdoings. During the time he stayed in contact with Benetton, who placed him in charge of franchising the fashion brand through the United States, he expanded Benetton immensely and made $1 squillion more. And he eventually had his prison sentence squashed so that he could move around freely and so on. That will be a common part of Flavio Briatore's life story. Transition into the pit lane. So Benetton buys the Tolman team. And even though Briatore had very little interest in Formula One, in fact, he was, 38? Nearly 40 years old. Not much. I've been watching Formula One for 25 years. He was almost my age when he watched his first race. And this Benetton guy buys a team and just says, Flavio Briatore, you're my team principal. Unbelievable. Once coronated, Briatore wasted little time in making his mark, firing the last remaining members of the Tolman management structure. He then hired, then fired Chief Engineer John Bernard, replacing him with Tom Wilkinshaw, before setting his sights on Michael Schumacher from Jordan. You remember what Eddie Jordan said about Flavio just a second ago? I fought with him the most. I loved going to dinner with him the most. Flavio stole Michael Schumacher from Jordan, put him in his own team. The gamble paid off. Schumacher won at Spa in 1992, then again at Estoril in 1993. 1994 would prove to be the breakout year, Schumacher claiming the Drivers' Championship. Success brought greater scrutiny, and the first of several allegations of cheating began to emerge. Whoops. They had to cheat because of this.
The car is bad, we know. Please drive it.
The FIA had banned several electronic aids for the 1994 season in order to slow the escalating pace of the cars. Imagine that. Cars are too fast. We have to artificially make them slower. Anyway, they wanted to place greater emphasis on the driver's ability. So, in other words, they felt like the cars were getting too easy to drive. So they banned all these things: traction control, power brakes, anti-lock brakes, active suspension. Refueling was also reintroduced. That will be important. Murmurs of discontent surfaced straight away after the first round in Brazil. Ayrton Senna had been leading the race on lap 21 with Schumacher close behind, Schumacher driving for Benetton. They both pitted and the German emerged ahead after a faster stop, going on to win the race, leading to accusations of misconduct. Well, what's that about? Later on in the season, a fire during a pit stop for Benetton number 2 driver Jos Verstappen led to an investigation. Now, you might remember this because whenever people talk about Jos Verstappen, when it's not about how much of an abusive father he was to Max, it's usually about this. It's about this incredible fire that broke out in the pits. Well, what would have caused that? Well, it turns out this is what happened. The fuel nozzle had not been properly sealed, and Verstappen plus 4 mechanics suffered minor burns. The report found evidence of a foreign body in the fuel valve, plus the removal of an anti-fire filter. The result being that the fuel flowed into the tanks approximately 12.5% faster, saving around 1 second per pit stop. Now this, I know we haven't had refueling in Formula One for a long time, but it can't be overstated how important it was back in those days to do a quick pit stop and put in as little fuel as you needed. And there would be splash and dash pit stops where drivers would come in and just get a small amount of fuel so they could go back out, do faster laps, stop a second time, and then overtake someone who was in front of them. That was how much of a difference it used to make in those days. So pit stops are important. Being able to fuel the car quickly was important. Safety, obviously not so important. On a technicality, they got off. They said the manufacturer is to blame. Other teams are doing this as well. So they escaped punishment, unbelievably. But the stakes were raised when this happened. The tragic deaths of Senna and Roland Ratzenberger in Imola brought a bigger controversy to light. Senna had been convinced that several teams were still utilising the benefits of traction control, and after one of the races, the FIA demanded the top 3 finishing teams submit their engine management systems for review. Ferrari handed over their code immediately. Benetton and McLaren submitted theirs after the FIA deadline. It looks... it's a totally non-sus look when the FIA says, you have to give us all of your operating code, and they're like, yeah... Huh? The code. Can we have the code, please? Sure, the code. Yeah, the code. The thing is the thing about the code is that I don't have the code. You can't have it. It's at Bill's house. It's at Fred's house. I left it in my other pants. Benetton's excuse was that the supplier, Cosworth, owned the code. Weak ass excuse. Both of the teams were fined $100,000 for not handing over the code when they were supposed to. And then once they did hand over the code and it was investigated, what do you know? We found the existence of traction and launch control hidden in the code. Now, Benetton argued, hey, just because it's in the code doesn't mean we've used it. If you can't prove we haven't used it, you can't prove anything. So they got off. Unbelievable. Gets off scot-free. Something happens here where there's a whole bunch of crashes, and it says a feud broke out between the FIA, Max Mosley, and Briatore. Briatore accused the FIA of incompetence. Neither man would back down, and there was tension between those two. That will be important again later as well. There's some stuff here about the plank, which is not interesting. Driver aid conflict reared its ugly head again after the French Grand Prix. Schumacher qualified third but overtook both Williams drivers, Nigel Mansell and David Hill, before the first corner, raising suspicions Benetton had used launch control. Briatore then employed his box of dirty tricks at the British Grand Prix. Schumacher qualified second but overtook Damon Hill on the parade lap, earning him a 5-second penalty, which he was ordered to serve on lap 21 by the stewards, but Schumacher was told by Briatore, don't serve that penalty. I'm going to go and argue it. So he went and argued it. Just basically stalled for time. And then because he was talking to the stewards and stalling for time, Schumacher, he eventually lost, and Schumacher eventually served the penalty. But then they investigated the stewards to say, hey, how come you let them serve the penalty so late? And they were like, I guess it was a bit late. They're like, you have to tell them within 15 minutes of the infringement that he has to serve the penalty, and it took you 27 minutes to do that. So it's your fault. I mean, it's just really... This guy's character is just really unbelievable. Basically, there's some success with Schumacher, Briatore, and Benetton until it gets too much even for Michael Schumacher. And Michael Schumacher says, I'm done with Flavio Briatore. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to Ferrari. They want me anyway. They're going to pay me a bucket load of money, and they're the best team in Formula One, most prestigious team, and I want to go and win with them instead. So he leaves. Benetton has a few more struggling years, and eventually Briatore is pushed out. But then, Flavio Briatore returns in the year 2000 at the behest of Renault, who purchased the Benetton Formula One team. During his downtime, Briatore took on the role of manager of a bunch of drivers, including young Spanish driver by the name of Fernando Alonso, engineering him a drive at Minardi. Then Briatore takes over at Renault. What do you know? Fernando Alonso becomes the Renault test driver. And then, funny coincidence, let's get rid of Jenson Button and give the seat to Fernando Alonso, this car that I manage. Now, in fairness to him, it says right here too, Briatore's gamble paid off. The Spaniard won back-to-back drivers' titles in 2005 and 2006. But still, that stinks. That stinks. Fernando goes off to McLaren, who are desperate for a real gun driver. They obviously pick up Fernando Alonso and a young driver called Lewis Hamilton, who you might have heard of. Flavio Briatore wasn't worried. He had all these other drivers, Mark Webber, Jarno Trulli, Nelson Piquet Jr., Heikki Kovalainen to fill the ranks. So he was like, I'll be fine. Fernando, you can go. I'm going to make money off you. So, and McLaren want to pay you a heap of money, so why not? Here's why not. The next scandal too in Golf Formula One reared its head in 2007 and was centered around corporate espionage, better known as Spygate. You might have heard of this. You could look it up in Wikipedia. To date, it is the most serious and most penalized case of match fixing that there has ever been in the history of all sports, not motorsport, not Formula One, all sports. McLaren were caught in possession of detailed technical information of the Ferrari race car. Naturally, Briatore was in the thick of it, saying that it was probably McLaren team principal Ron Dennis who was behind everything. McLaren as a team were kicked out of the Constructors' Championship. The drivers were allowed to keep their points and continue to compete. It later emerged that it was Alonso who actually was the source of the information. Briatore's driver. Funny that. Kind of be weird if he didn't know about it and wasn't involved even, maybe. You know, it'd be weird if he didn't at least know about it. But it's funny that he's sort of, this web of badness, this tornado of badness seems to just swoop up Briatore at every opportunity. Alonso left McLaren at the end of the season and Briatore welcomed him back to Renault with open arms. He was still his manager after all. Renault themselves were not innocent. In Spygate, they were supplied information, including but not limited to a bunch of technical details about the McLaren car. So look, again, it's a bit of a case of everyone's doing it, so we're going to do it too. Reunited, the dream duo struggled to recapture their past high, so Briatore started to work the angles, searching for a new advantage, one he would employ at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. Did I say before that Spygate was the highest penalized event in sport? Maybe I meant this. Anyway. You probably heard about this. With the assistance of Chief Engineer Pat Simmons, Briatore had calculated the exact moment and corner in the race for number 2 driver Nelson Piquet Jr. to tactically crash, causing the deployment of the safety car, which served to Alonso's advantage. Alonso went on to take the checkered flag. We've talked about this incident as well because of Felipe Massa's legal action against I guess, Bernie Ecclestone and the FIA to say, hey, that race was rigged and I lost that race. Now, he lost that race mostly because of his own incompetence, as well as this cheating incident. And I went through at the time, even if you threw Renault out of the championship and denied them all points, Lewis Hamilton would still have been world champion because of, even if you elevated everybody up in the points for this race, Hamilton would have just won by more points because Hamilton did better than Felipe Massa in this race. But this is the tangled web we weave on this channel, talking about all these things. So the allegations of race fixing, it all came out. Briatore was... Here's the hearing. Here's the stuff about the hearing. Briatore continued to protest his innocence and claimed the resignation was his duty to the good of the team. So he was saying, I'm not admitting any guilt, but there's a cloud over this team now, and I'm going to quit for the good of the team. This isn't the guy that does anything for the good of anyone but himself. But anyway, at the hearing, the FIA banned Briatore for life from all sanctioned events, making an example of the Italian for refusing to admit guilt despite the overwhelming evidence against him. The governing body also refused to grant a super license to any drivers managed by him. Super license. Hey, they said our name. They said the word. Effectively ending any involvement he had with Formula One, Renault was shown leniency by the FIA due to the swift action after the allegations came to light, receiving a 2-year probation sentence. I mentioned before, remember the fact that Max Mosley and Flavio Briatore banged heads. In 2010, Briatore challenged the FIA ban in the French justice system, arguing his public feud with Max Mosley led to a kangaroo court. He won the trial overturning the ban and was awarded €15,000 settlement. Well, it's not much. I've got more than that on me. Perhaps wisely, Briatore opted not to return to the sport, choosing to diversify his business interests, launching his own fashion label and opening a string of nightclubs and restaurants. Briatore, this is funny. Briatore treated himself to a 207-foot super yacht, which would be seized by the Italian government over tax evasion and VAT. For its charter status and fuel duty, the amount owed was estimated at €5 million. This is another thing I researched for this, which was what happened there. He was found to have not paid his tax. He created fake invoices to say my yacht is being used for business when it was not. And he was supposed to pay these taxes and he was trying to get around it. But then they caught him. He was arrested and charged again for his wrongdoing. I don't think there's any more interesting details here. I'm not interesting, but there's no more salient details that I wanted to go into there. So what does that tell you? Where does that leave you? What kind of feeling does that leave you with in terms of who Flavio Briatore is? What kind of person is Alpine realigning itself with? Alpine, remember, Renault, Alpine, Renault. Remember this, critics saying, maybe you're not the best person to be coming back to Formula One and getting aligned with this team. And remember his response. Great guy. I wish him all the best. If anyone happens to be in Monaco next year, I hear there's a yacht that you can get on. It's been seized by the government, but they're going to have a big party. Flavio's ex-wife and girlfriends are going to be on there. That's what I would do. Fuck me. You fuck off, Flavio. Flav B. You know on Facebook when you do those tests, what Spice Girl are you? His was Flav B. Look, it's not my fault. I don't make up the rules. The internet does. That's what I think about the return of Flavio Briatore. I don't know about you. Definitely let me know what you think. Are you a fan? Are you glad to have him back? Do you think it's a good thing? Because I, for one, absolutely do not. and he can go pound the sand as far as I'm concerned. What else should we do today? Oh, I was going to do this. New segment. Let's play the theme. We don't have one. Great. Way to go. Viewer Mailbag. You send me questions and I answer them. I've got a couple here, so let's get into them. Question the number 1. Will you be heading to Uncle Dan's to pick up a few bottles to try? Oh, this is a reference to... So if you're not from Australia, and I don't know how global this company is, there's a very famous chain of bottle shops in Australia called Dan Murphy's. You may have seen the headlines about Daniel Ricciardo's wine saying, "My wine from my stores." And there's been this big branding exercise to rebrand the Dan Murphy stores as Daniel Ricciardo's. So you don't go to Dan Murphy's, you go to Dan Ricciardo's and you buy his wine, the DR3 wine. I do want to get some. So far we've tried the Valtteri Bottas coffee beans that I tried raw, but I did drink coffee of them, like brewed properly, and it was really good. So I've tried that. I want to get this DR3 wine. I've been messaging Zach and he hasn't been responding, but I know he was going to Italy. He was going to try and get the Charles Leclerc ice cream, the Lec ice cream. So I'm hoping he can get some, and I'm hoping he can report back on that. But if I can get a bottle of the Dan Ricciardo wine, I'll try some on the next podcast or whatever. And if I go to Dan Murphy's and it's been kitted out with his photo and everything, I'll take a photo. Question the number 2. Love you to talk with Codders about McLaren. What other guests will you be talking to? Oh, thanks. So recently I did an interview with Stuart Codling, Codders, who released a book about the history of McLaren. It was basically a look at all the, nice glossy photo book, but with lots of detailed essay writing as well, because he's a brilliant journalist who's been around the traps. Probably has a few stories about Flavio he could share. Welcome to come on anytime, Codders. But I spent an hour talking to him about the book, the stories from the book, how it came together, all the rest of it. Who else will I be talking to as guests? Well, I'd love to have some more people on. Thinking about reaching out to some other, just podcasters and stuff. I used to try and reach out to journalists, which is always sometimes they're interested, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're busy. You kind of hassle them until they come on and then you feel guilty. I mean, I've talked to quite a few people. I could have guests on who are my friends who would do it just because, but I want to make some new friends as well. So maybe, I don't know, some of the big, Threads accounts, Instagram accounts, people who run those, or people who run other podcasts or video podcasts. I'll reach out to a few, see who wants to come on. That would be good. Question the number 3. Just discovered your stuff. Can you tell us more about making the Danica Patrick video? Yeah. I don't know what you want to know. the Danica Patrick video. So I said before, I said on Threads I was going to do a video about Flavio Briatore, but then the Danica Patrick news came onto my radar and I was like, forget that. I've got to do the Danica Patrick stuff instead. It was something along the lines of, I heard about it on a Thursday. I was going to record that night about it. I couldn't do it that night, and I did it the next day, edited it, put it straight out, and it just went bonkers. It's one of those things that's where do I start? The video did very well, and I was very happy. I put it out, and within a day, it had done 1,000 views or something, which is unheard of for the stuff we put out. But then also, when you log into YouTube, the analytics app, it gives you a breakdown of who your audience is and how many views it's had over time, and it tracks it and everything. And it gives you this idea of here's how this video is doing and here's your average. So most of the time videos just sort of track along and pick up a few views here and there. And it gives you a band. Here's your average views. And this one was just off the charts, huge. And I mean, and in one way, that's amazing, of course, and I love that. But in another way, it was here's this video, and here's where your videos usually do. And they also try and convert the numbers and analytics, because it's all a bit dry. They try and convert it into they give it a human touch and try to convert the data into something that you could just glance at and be like, oh, cool. So it says, here's your video, and it's doing better. If your video had more views than any of your last 10 videos, it's nice, this video got more views, well done. The Danica Patrick video ended up doing about 6,000 views, something like that, and it's slowing down now, but it's, it was great. But it was this video has done 6,000 views. That's about nearly 6,000 more than most of your viewers. I'm like, thanks. Thanks, YouTube. Great stuff. The other thing about that video was that it has these beats where it starts off and it's like, who is Danica Patrick? People don't seem to like her. Why don't they like her? And why might things have escalated from there further? That was the introductory beats of the video. That's like the first 5 minutes. And because I've already done a video about women driving in Formula One and the attitudes that exist in the sport towards women, not by all people, but by a whole bunch of people, and then I rattled off heaps of examples. That video that I did back in the day, you know, talking of YouTube analytics, there's this part where it's like, here's how many engagements you got in terms of thumbs up and thumbs down, and here's how many were positive. So that video got a lot of engagements, and the percentage of how many were positive was very, very, very small. So a lot of people had a very strong negative reaction to that. And then the funny thing is, the Danica Patrick video, in the first few minutes, I go through, despite being a woman who was successful in motorsport, Danica Patrick is very vocal in her opposition to women getting involved in motorsport. And I think that at that point, a lot of people hit the thumb down button because they obviously, and I know from some people who responded, they clearly didn't watch the rest of the video saying, yeah, she's right. It's like, did you watch the video? The bit where she says she believes lizard people run the world? You think she's right? Whoops. That's a yikes from me, dog. I think because a bunch of people watched the video and got to that part and decided, no, don't like that, thumbs down, that this video had the same thing where, or it could be conspiracy theory nuts who were like, don't like what you're saying, not interested in that, let's give it a thumbs down. So this is the stuff that I see that people don't see. They just see how many thumbs up it got. But the ratio of thumbs up to thumbs down, very bad. Do better in future, please, Rod, and Super License in general. That's the Danica Patrick story. What's next? Hey, Rod, was wondered if you were... What? Hey, Rod, was wondering if you were as happy for Ralf Schumacher as I am. I assume that this is about the Instagram post. So he posted on Instagram recently that he had found a partner in his life and had everything he needed, and he was very happy. And his partner was a man. And, you know, that story has really blown up and become a huge story. Ralf Schumacher, Formula One driver, comes out as gay. Which, I mean, maybe he's gay, maybe he's bi, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fine. I'm not interested necessarily in talking heaps about it. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I mean, he can be gay. That's great. I support that. I completely support it. Of course I do. But I'm also like, that's his private life, and I don't really have much to contribute other than, good on you. Great. Excellent. He's not the first gay Formula One driver, by the way. Some have come out as bi. Some have come out as lesbian. Yeah, lesbian. But good on him. The thing that's why I don't have much to say about it. But I don't want to just be silent about it and not throw my support into the ring, because that's not that that's diminishing it, but I've become, maybe it's just where I am in my life, but I want to be really vocal in my allyship. So I'm trying. I saw some pushback on threads about Ralf saying, well, everyone's saying congratulations and good on Ralf for coming out in this sense. But it's funny how a few years ago, when other drivers were coming out in support of other causes and other, you know, advocating for other things, he was telling them, hey, you shouldn't do that. I think the example, someone found it, I think the example that he was talking about was, for example, Lewis Hamilton coming out during that 2021 sort of era where he was very vocal about a whole bunch of causes and pushing for Formula One to be more vocal and be more politically involved. Ralf Schumacher was like, drivers shouldn't do that. Drivers' job is to drive. If there's going to be a social message or an advocacy message from the sport, it should come from the sport. The drivers can support it, but it's not up to drivers to bring their personal messages to the events and to the tracks. I mean, on the one hand, he has a point. On the other hand, shut up, who cares? So what? And, Ralf Schumacher's not a current driver driving in events, so the two are not really, like, that criticism of Ralf Schumacher is just not really relevant. I don't know. Like I said, I want to be more vocal in my allyship and advocacy, so, I can't say drivers shouldn't be able to do that. They should be able to do that if they want. I think Lewis has done a great job lately of being quite vocal. I have missed a comment from a little while ago and I'm really gutted. But since we're doing mailbag, let's answer this. This is a live comment from the live stream. Is it Mass's argument that the points from Singapore should have just been voided? Yeah, that is his argument. The problem is, this is again talking about the Singapore Grand Prix. The argument was that Flavio Briatore ordered his number 2 driver to crash deliberately to advantage his number 1 driver, Fernando Alonso, who went on to win the race. So what this person is saying is, wasn't Mass's argument that the points from that race should have been voided? That is Mass's argument. The problem is he's wrong. Just because one team cheated, you don't strip the points from every other team. They didn't cheat. You know what I mean? So that is where we know that year, very famously, Lewis Hamilton won by 1 point by overtaking Glock on the last lap and in the last few corners to deny Massa the championship. But all these decades later, Massa is looking back saying, hey, the FIA knew that that race had been fixed. They should have declared me the championship by wiping all teams' points from that whole event. But the counterpoint that people have made, and like I said, when McLaren were found to have cheated by being in possession of the telemetry and mechanics of one of their rivals' cars, they were kicked out of the constructors, not all teams. That would be ludicrous. So if you were to follow that through, for example, you might say, okay, so the Renault team cheated in that race. Let's strip their points from the whole year or from that race. But because Hamilton finished ahead of Massa in that race, everybody would have just stepped up in the points. So Hamilton would have finished the year on more points than Massa and he would have been the champion anyway. The whole argument is mute because it's all nonsense. Last question from the mailbag for this week. Tell me this, what's better, horses or tables? You're a real thinker, whoever contributed this one. What's better, horses or tables? I guess the connection here is they've both got 4 legs. Horses, living sentient beings, part of the majesty of our animal kingdom. But tables, extremely handy when you want to eat dinner, play table tennis, play poker. Just don't invite Flavio. I don't know what's better, horses or tables. They're both good. If I had to ride one, horse. If I have to eat dinner off one, tables. I hope that answers your question. Send us your stupid questions on Threads, or you can email superlicencepodcast@gmail.com. I think that might wrap up the live stream for this week. Thanks for watching. I'm going to try and get in touch with Zach. I'm going to try and get a podcast happening soon. Hopefully I can get that happening. That would be really good. Where's my music? Here we go. Get a little bit of music coming, a bit of ambience. Thanks so much for subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. See you on Threads. See you for the upcoming races. Hope everyone stays well. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.